let's jump in and keep going. We've got a lot of information I'm going to give you, and I just want to stress to you that we are just scratching the surface on some of these topics, and my goal this morning is just to get you pointed in the right direction. And I'll give more information on that heartbeat in just a minute. But Lindley brought up something in the break, and I just wanted to share this with you guys. The kids in this generation, it seems like they really like the iPod and things like that, listening to stuff. So I thought, well, I want my kids to keep reading, and particularly Weston really likes to listen to stuff on his iPhone. And he'll listen to something on there in the mornings when he's getting ready. He'll listen when he's working around the house, mopping the floor, whatever we have him doing. He'll have his earphones in. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to start buying biographies, audio biographies, and letting him listen to them. And so he loves it. He's right now listening to the book on George Washington. Fantastic book. I mean, it's a huge book. And it's wonderful biography he's listening to. He listened to the book on Abraham Lincoln by O'Reilly. Fantastic book. I mean, he's listening to a lot of really, really good books. He listened to Pilgrim's Progress a couple weeks ago, and he just finished The Hobbit. And so he's listening to a lot of books in addition to reading some things. And so just think of ways you can get your kids to be exposed to this really good literature that exists out there. Is great benefit to their education. Okay, let's get into the next topic. This is on sex education and marriage preparation. This ought to be fun for us, and so let's jump right in. If I were to ask how many of you had healthy and regular interaction with your parents about sexuality so that you're prepared to deal with sexuality as you grew up and then later married, I suspect very few of you would raise your hands. And it probably maybe like less than what's on one hand of mine. Maybe 4 or 5 of you might raise your hands. We don't have really good models here for the most part. At least that's been my experience as I've talked about this in the past and asked for input. It's been pretty clear that we don't have a lot of really good models. And even if we did have great models, it doesn't take away the fact that this is a scary and challenging aspect of parenting. And often we're not comfortable enough to be having all the conversations about sex in our own marriages, much less having conversations about sexuality with our children. And so it's really challenging, but I just want to tell you that none of those realities that make this challenging creates a legitimate excuse for not working hard to parent well in this area. And so I really want to encourage you to just adopt the mindset that you must put great effort in this area of your parenting, the sexual education and marriage preparation. See, God has a plan for this area of our lives, and the truth is that most people are missing that plan. The current statistics that I was able to find say that by the time a kid reaches 18, that 2/3 of them have had sex. By the time they finish their first year of college, 75% of them have had sex. And then it just keeps going up every year in college after that. And so as a parent, we can really have the greatest influence on our kids' choices in sexuality. And we should not give that role of influence up to anyone. We ought to seize that opportunity and really make the most of it. And the first thing that we've got to do as parents with this mandate is we've got to make sure that our own perspective and experiences with sexuality are biblical and healthy. And so let me give you 2 perspectives you've got to embrace as a parent to be able to successfully educate your children in sexuality. Number 1, sex is a gift. It's not bad. It's not wrong. It's not ugly. It's not dirty. Sex is a gift. All right, it's given for procreation. It's given to create union between a husband and a wife, and it's given for pleasure. And it's a gift from God. And I think about it a lot in terms of Christmas. You know, Christmas gift wrapped under the tree is meant to be opened on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. Whenever your family does it, that's when it's supposed to be opened. But if you go to that tree and you open it, December 5th, well, then your parents are going to be really upset that you violated the appropriate way for that gift to be experienced. It doesn't change the fact that the gift itself is good. What made it all wrong is that you abused the gift. You squandered the opportunity to experience within the boundaries that the gift was supposed to be experienced. And there are drastic consequences for that. And so you've got to understand and convey and believe and embrace that sex is a gift. No doubt it can be abused. No doubt it can be squandered. No doubt it could be really misused. But it does not change the biblical truth that sex is a gift. You have to embrace that. Okay, second thing is that sex is loving and serving within the context of marriage and should be a regular part of your marriage in conversation and practice. This is a biblical concept. It's a biblical truth, and you have to embrace it. Sex is a part of your loving and serving your spouse and should be a regular part of your conversation and your practice. Now, those two realities have to be moving forward in your life for you to effectively teach your children about sexuality. Did I say that strongly enough? In fact, I just want you to know you don't have to be perfect in these areas, but you do have to be moving forward. Now, there are those rare exceptions where moving forward in those two areas, sex is a gift, sex is an opportunity to love and serve within the marriage, and it needs to be regularly communicated and practiced. There are rare exceptions where that is simply not possible, and I don't want to get into those scenarios when that's not possible, but I do want to tell you that if you believe that's you, then you need to do something about it. You need to get some help. You need to go see a counselor. You need to make efforts to move forward because your parenting is connected to how you're moving forward in those areas. Now, if you're in a scenario where it's very difficult to move forward, that does not mean that you should not embrace those biblical perspectives. If your experiences do not lend themselves to the belief that sex is a gift and it should be practiced in communication and all that within marriage, that you cannot let that bleed into what you're doing or what you won't do with your own children. You've got to embrace this is a gift and it's supposed to be a regular part of married life, biblically. And you've got to try to move forward in your own life in that direction, and that's got to be a foundational perspective when you begin to teach your children. All right? All right, let me give you a few more details on that first perspective that sex is a gift. So when you're teaching your children that sex is a gift, don't focus just on the bad things that will happen if they abuse the gift. I think it's important that they hear those things, but you ought to be giving more positive than negative. Don't give them more negative than you do positive. When I do premarital counseling and marriage counseling, whenever I am doing those counseling experiences and the idea of having sex for premarital couples is a negative in one or both spouses, it becomes a real problem. When a viewpoint of sex is negative, it doesn't follow those biblical perspectives in the married couple for one spouse, they experience unnecessary difficulty. And what I've found out is the majority of the times, the negative perspective on sex goes back to their mom and dad. Now, some of the situations have to do with experiences that were forced on individuals before marriage or even within marriage. But most of the negativity comes from the perspective they gained from their parents. And I just want to encourage you, don't hamstring your children in their sexuality by conveying a negative perspective on sexuality. All right? Make sure you do more positive than negative. You got to remember that the goal of this area of your parenting is not to have kids that simply avoid the dangers of premarital or extramarital sex, but the goal is really to equip them to be faithful within Christian marriage. See, far too many kids have not been equipped by their parents to be faithful in marital sexual intimacy. So here's the way I think about it with my own kids. I think that I'm preparing my sons and my daughter to give the gift of sexual intimacy to their future spouse so that throughout their marriages they will experience God-glorifying intimacy that will play a major role in their marriage, effectively demonstrating the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what I'm trying to do in my sex education of my children. That's Lindley and I's goal. As much as the thought of that with my daughter makes me ill, that is my goal. When we see the true goal, then we can understand that we absolutely cannot leave sex education for the kids to someone else. It is our job, and nobody else can nurture our kids in this arena like we can. Nobody. And so in order to reach that goal, you've got to understand that sex education is not primarily about biological information. It's about shaping their hearts. And so we got to address the what, we've got to address the how, and we most absolutely must address the why. And we got to do that on the foundation of shaping our children's hearts and shaping their heart for Jesus Christ. And sex education is one of many areas where a parent is called to shape the heart of their children. This is just one of many. But we're going to focus in a little bit on this. Now, if your kids have not already heard this from you and they should have heard about it, then just recognize it's not too late to start. It's never too late to start. You need to make sure you're doing that. If your kids are at an age where you're already engaging in some of these conversations, then I'm hoping that today will be an encouragement for you to move forward in that arena. If your kids are still little, a lot of you guys have little ones, and you're not at this place yet, I hope that this will point you in the right direction so that you're very much on top of this and ready to deal with it through the years. All right, there are 7 things I want to talk to you that I think are critical in discussing this area. Again, I'm just scratching the surface, hoping to point you in the right direction. So number 1, you need to work hard at having a very close relationship with your children. I'm not talking about being your children's best friend. I'm talking about you being your child's parent, but being very close to them, knowing what's going on in their life, being a part of everything they're dealing with, that you maintain closeness in a relationship with your children. Kids who are close to their parents, just statistically, kids who are close to their parents are much less likely to experiment with sex. That closeness that they sense with you is critical. And you've really got to work hard at maintaining a close relationship. And something that a close relationship does through the years that will be vital for your sexual education is close relationships with your kids create teachable moments where they ask questions or where scenarios come up and you can engage in conversation because there's a closeness there. It just kind of unfolds naturally. And those teachable moments are so very important in the area of sexuality. And so as those occur in your kids' lives, seize those moments in age-appropriate ways. So work hard at staying close to your kids. Remember the last session I emphasized time. Here it is again. You've got to really spend the time. Okay? So for some of you with little ones who have siblings of the opposite sex, you're going to begin to experience those teachable moments early on. What is that? Why are they different? And your little 2, 3, and 4-year-olds are not asking the question about where does this go into someone. They're not asking that question. They're not asking for a description of the biological function of the body sexually. They're just asking about why are they different? Well, you can answer those questions in a way that creates closeness, creates conversation, and answers the curiosity of your child in an age-appropriate time. For example, your little boy says, he's 4, he says about his little sister who's 1, why doesn't she have what I have? You say, well, son, what you have is called a penis. God gives every little boy a penis. It's a gift from God. And it's to be used for the Lord in marriage and in your everyday life. It's a very private part of your body, and you're supposed to keep it to yourself. You're not supposed to show it to other people, and you only see it when you're going to the bathroom, you're taking a shower, taking a bath, or changing clothes, and it's your private part from God. And your sister has a private part. It's called a vagina. It's not like yours. It's different. It's the way God made girls, the way God made boys, because he has a very special reason for them being made that way. It's a gift. Okay, great. And they go off and play. I mean, that's all it takes is just an explanation. You're pointing to the gift, the goodness, the rightness of the way God created them for a bigger reason. And you're just building upon it so that years go by, you begin to give more and more information, more and more specifics, and answer more and more of the questions that they're really asking. And so you want to be age appropriate in understanding what are they really asking here. Well, when they're 4 years old, they're not asking about how it all works out. They're just asking about what the differences are. So think about it in an age appropriate manner, and that closeness that you have with them will create teachable moments. Okay, number 2, instill some core values and truths. Now this goes back to discipleship, but I just want to give you a highlight on particular core truths that will affect your children's perspective on sexuality. All right, number 1 is sin. Your kids need to know that they are bent towards sin in every way, and so is everybody around them. Okay, my daughter and my sons have heard all their lives that they are wicked. That's just what they've heard from mom and dad. You are wicked, and you need Jesus Christ. Mom and dad are wicked, we need Jesus Christ. Our hearts are wicked, bottom line. And so when I sit down with my daughter, who's going to go to winter formal in January with a little boy, I'm going to say to her, sweetheart, you remember how all your life you've heard that you are wicked and that you need Jesus Christ. Yes, Dad. Well, this boy is wicked. He is wicked. I don't care what he says to you, what he acts like, he is wicked. And you don't know, and I don't know how much he trusts in Jesus Christ to overcome his wickedness. You don't trust him one bit. I'm going to teach her that. Why? Because all her life she's heard that, and she's going to look at him and say, she's not going to say to me, she's going to say something like, Dad, come on, but she's going to know that that's absolutely the truth because she's heard it her whole life. And it will help her be guarded because she knows that is a core truth about everyone. And she's going to trust the Lord in that. Or I'm going to kill that young boy. Okay, God's love is the second thing in his offer for forgiveness. So God's forgiveness of sins. You've got to teach your kids forgiveness so they can know that no matter what mistake they make, God can forgive and heal them. So you want to teach them about sin. You want to teach them about forgiveness. Third thing is you want them to make sure that their significance is rooted in God's love for them. That is critical. They cannot believe they're significant because they do well in school, or they do well in sports, or they do well in taking care of the things you tell them to take care of. They've got to believe that the core of their significance is found in God's love for them expressed in Jesus Christ. That has to be what they believe their significance comes from. Okay, so really work hard at getting that into their hearts. And then the next one, help them understand that life is not fair. A lot of kids will do things that they never thought they would do because they don't like something, they're hurt, things are difficult, they'll react. And if you just teach your kids from early on, life is not fair. It's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, you're going to be hurt, you're going to be damaged, you're going to be sorry. And you teach them how to deal with that kind of stuff, they're less likely to react in a self-punishing manner, sexually. And so really work hard at helping them understand that life is not fair. And then ultimately, and this is the heart of discipleship, help them get why they're here. Help them really get why they were made. What is the purpose for their life? So those are just a few core values you need to instill in them related to the concept of sexuality. Okay, number three, teach your kids how to choose their friends. So teach your kids how to choose their friends. Choosing friends has much to do with your kids' experience of sexuality. So teach them what kind of friends to choose, how to choose their friends, and why they should be wise in the choices of their friends. What, how, why? Choosing friends is so very important. Okay, number 4, you've got to answer the question now. Most of you guys here don't have dating age children. You need to answer the question now. What are you going to do with this whole concept of dating? Go ahead and figure that one out. Because if you don't answer the question long before they start wanting to date, and you try to figure it out on the fly, you're going to compromise. And you're going to have indecision, and that's going to communicate that you really don't know the what, you really don't know the how, and you certainly haven't figured out the why. And that will not help you. And so let me give a couple of words to the whys here. Biblical moral guidelines for relationships should be your standard guide, no matter how you choose to deal with the issues of dating or courtship. And there are clear biblical moral guidelines. All right, with that in mind, I think you should discourage romance before romance can progress to its natural end. So you should teach your children to see their romantic feelings for others as part of what God has given them as a gift, but teach them also about delayed gratification and the benefits of delayed gratification. The better things come in the long term, when in the short term you don't respond to those emotions. Now, there are some of those kinds of emotions that are not gifts from the Lord. Whenever a young man has an attraction for a young woman, and that young man's attraction for that young woman leads him to begin to contemplate sexual behavior that is serving his own desires for his own benefit, those are not feelings from the Lord. You need to help him to distinguish between the two. So they know my initial attraction towards someone who is attractive to me is something God has given me that I am grateful to have. But when that attraction goes to the point of one to violate these biblical guidelines, it ceases to become a gift from the Lord, and it becomes selfishness, lust, and sin that I can act upon. And I want to be able to make sure I'm honoring God with the gifts He's given me, and I'm preventing things from moving forward in a time frame when they cannot biblically move forward. Delayed gratification. Right? So teach them the value of guarding their hearts, waiting for the time when they can move forward with their feelings. You need to warn them when talking about dating or courting. You need to warn them about things like date rape and getting in wrong situations. You need to teach them how to say no and how to be protective and wise and assessing the situation that they're in. You need to make sure that your kids hear about that wickedness and dishonesty again and again and again. And never, ever trust your children blindly. Ever. And never trust their peers at all. Period. Ever. You are called to nurture your children, not trust them. And there's a big difference. Peer relationships are important and should be encouraged with wisdom. So peer relationships with the opposite sex are important. And so your sons need to learn to treat girls with honor and respect. One of the talks that I had with Caden, as he was entering into the 5th and 6th grade, I sat down with him and I said, look, Caden, here's the deal. Some of the girls in your grade, over the next couple of years, they're going to start having their period. They're going to start growing breasts. They're going to start becoming women, looking more like your mom looks. You've seen your big sister go through some of that. Guess what? Some of the boys in your class are going to make fun of those girls. Guess what you're never going to do? You're never going to make fun of those girls. You're going to respect them. You're going to honor them. They're going through a difficult time. For some of them, it's traumatic. You need to be sensitive to them and encouraging to them and kind to them. I'm not telling you to like them. I'm not telling you want to be around them. I don't care if you don't even like girls right now. In fact, I'm pretty happy with that. But what you cannot do is be like any other boys that make fun of girls who are changing. You are to honor women. See, I've just taught him. So that's what you've got to do, is make sure that his interaction with girls is polite and honoring and respectful. Vice versa, you need to make sure that your daughters learn to treat boys with honor and respect. Okay? Providing support through the boundaries and rules you enforce is as important as the rules themselves. When you place these rules in place, if you put these rules in place, there's going to be a time when your daughter or your son's heart begins to run away with them and push against the boundaries and the rules. If you are not there as a support through all of that, they will push beyond the rules. And you will help them stay within the boundaries that are best for them if you really, really work hard at being supportive and involved in how they feel. All right. Okay, I'm gonna give you a quick description of how Lindley and I have handled the dating thing with our two oldest, and how our youngest is seeing that it's coming down to him in several years. And again, now I'm going to explain this to you quickly and briefly, and you can ask questions if you want to in a little bit. But I'm doing this just so you get an idea of what we've done. I'm not doing this because I think this is the right way to do it. It's just our experience, and I just want you to hear it. And if it does anything in your life, I hope it creates communication between you as husbands and wives. All right? We have really, because of our understanding of Scripture, because of our own experiences, we have wanted our kids to have as little experiences in dating before the ages they can get married as possible. So we don't want them to hardly do anything in dating until they're 18 and older. So we just made a hard, fast rule that there wasn't going to be any dating before 16. You're not dating before 16. And why do we do that? Well, because 16 is the age they can drive a car and go places. And it's very, very likely they're going to go places where there are people of the opposite sex. That's just a part of the natural occurrences in their lives. Whether they're dating or not, they're going to interact. And so that age 16 is where things change in the way we expect them to interact. So previous to that, there's no we're going out, we're going together, whatever they call it, and however they talk about it and text about it. Our kids are not participating in that. And very quickly, their friends find out about that, and things are said about them. Malin's not allowed to go out. Caden doesn't go out with anybody. That's not happening. Well, they just get over it because that's the way we are, and that's the way we're going to do it. And we've told them what? We've told them how they're going to play that out, and we've told them why. And our biggest why with our kids under 16 is, this is how this plays out. You go with so-and-so for a week or two, and then somebody else becomes a better option. You go with them for a week or two, and you just go through a series of going with whoever over all this time. And you know what happens? You become enemies with everyone you went with. And all of a sudden, you don't have friends because everybody's mad at you because you did something wrong to them when you were in this relationship that really never even existed. It's stupid. And it's not going to benefit you at all. And I just help them know why it's not going to benefit them, how it's going to hurt them, and why this is a waste of their effort and time. And I paint the picture of how incredible it is to be able to be friends with everybody and to watch everybody else go through all this drama that you're not involved in. You just get to be who you are without all of the strings attached. And it's a lot more fun. You have a lot more friends, and you enjoy everything a lot more. Well, when they start seeing the drama unfold, and they've agreed to the what and the how, they begin to realize the why is really true. And then all of a sudden, they're not embarrassed about being that one kid whose parents won't let them go with anybody. They're just like, I'm not doing that. That's not what we do. And even Caden right now, he's like, that's not what we do. That's not the Eckert way. And so he's into it because Weston and Malin did it before him, and they bought into the why. Now he's buying into the why. And so that's what they do before 16. After 16, we loosen the reins a little bit, and so they can go to certain functions, go to certain things with somebody of the opposite sex as friends. Okay? In other words, we are creating boundaries around their heart. You have feelings that want to go beyond friendship with this individual. We are not going to let that happen. We are going to prevent that from happening as much as we can so that you can, at some point when those feelings are there, let it go to its end. Because see, here, if you do it right now and you're 16, guess what's going to happen? And I point out all the whys, both positive and negative. This is going to kill you. This is not good. It's a whole lot better to do it this way because this way you can do this and this will happen. And so I just paint out all those pictures and I say, this is the way it's going to be. And so far, we've got buy-in because they're getting the why. And when they get to be 18, we let go of the reins. Okay, you're old enough to do whatever. We hope we've given you enough wisdom to make good choices. I'm going to tell them why it's not really that smart yet at 18 to go ahead and get married. But I am not going to prevent them from moving in the natural progression of their heart at that stage because I've done all the training that I can. And at 18, I'm going to let the reins go. And I'm going to say, I want you to follow the Lord. And it's up to them at that point. But what I'm trying to do is create the best scenario before they have the freedom to do their own life without my authority. I'm trying to give them the best scenario for them to experience the greatest outcome of the why. And so you can flesh that out however you want to, and I'm not telling you how to do it, but I know that it requires your involvement and your direction from early on. You cannot start this when they get to be 16. You've got to be teaching them from the time they're in about second grade because they start having interests, especially little girls. And you've got to start teaching them about what you're going to do with their heart, how they're going to do this, and why they're going to do it. So you've got to do it a lot, okay? Which I'm going to actually emphasize here in a second. Okay, number 5, how to have the talk. How to have the talk. Okay, this should not be a one-time occurrence. Sex education is never really done. It's supposed to be a part of your parenting as long as you're alive at some level. So it starts early, it continues through all their teen years until they get married, and then even in their marriage as needed, you will be a great encouragement in this arena of their life. So the talk should begin early with body parts and the biological difference between boys and girls, using age-appropriate descriptions and details. Use clear and correct language. In this book that's on your resource sheet, How and When to Tell Your Kids About Sex, which, by the way, is an excellent book. I would recommend it for you guys, definitely. But in that book, there's this little story about this little boy who comes to his father, and they're in the parents' bedroom, and he begins to look around the corner and look around this way and look in the closet. He says, "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for the shovel." "The shovel? Why are you looking for a shovel in the bedroom?" He says, "Well, because you told me when you and Mom have sex, you plant the sperm in her womb. And I'm looking for the shovel that will enable you to plant that in her body." It's like, wait a minute, I wasn't very clear, So be clear, be correct, and use descriptions and language that do answer their questions as best you can. The talk should progress to include issues dealing with puberty and the changes that happen by God's design. These are not bad changes, not negative changes, not shameful changes. I can't tell you the number of stories I've heard about young girls who go through puberty and never have anybody tell them about what's going to be happening and how that creates shame and embarrassment and just really confusion. And and it's the same with boys. Maybe even more so, because very few dads are having these discussions. You know, a boy has a nocturnal emission, and his sheets are soiled, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's ashamed, and he doesn't know how to walk through that, and he never says anything about it, because the dad's never told him anything could happen. And a dad needs to be there to walk his son through what's going to happen in puberty, and a mom needs to be there to walk her daughter through those changes. And you've got to make sure that you interact with your kids so that they see this as a wonderful part of God's plan for their lives. Okay, so you got boy puberty issues and girl puberty issues. And there's a lot of resources here that will give you help with those if you look to those resources. And that'll allow me not to go into details since we're time sensitive. Although I can. I'm great with talking through it. It's great with me. So anyway, then the talk should include the complete discourse and disclosure of sexuality. And that should include what not to do, how not to do it, why not to do it, in light of the truth of God that gives them this understanding of when they can do it to the glory of God. Okay? And so make sure that they get all of that. And you can use a simple story of like a dog in a fence. You know, you keep your dog in a fence. Why? Because you want to keep your dog safe. But the problem with your dog is your dog thinks that the fence is a problem. So your dog wants to get out of the fence because he thinks freedom is found outside the fence. What he finds out is when he gets outside the fence, that what's found outside the fence is the car that smashes his life. And what he failed to recognize is that me as his owner actually blessed him by putting a fence up so he could have a degree of freedom that would never bring harm into his life. And he's violated that fence, and he's found out that what he wanted for himself brought his death, and what I gave him was really better for him. And that's what God has done while giving us a fence around sexuality, so that we can experience a degree of freedom that we're supposed to experience that gives us the greatest benefit that we could ever experience, that prevents us from experiencing the death that comes outside the fence that God put up. Make sense? Okay, that's stuff you can use, to talk to your kids about why. Okay, then someday after you walk through all this over the years, then you can have the opportunity to help your kid know what to do, how to do, and why to do within marriage. All right, number six, a clean slate is best. And what I mean by that is don't wait until your kid starts hearing stuff around other kids about sexuality before you start talking about it. You build on a clean slate so you don't have to combat some of the problems they'll hear from their peers. And don't think because you homeschool this won't happen to you. If your kids are around other kids, I can guarantee you they will hear about sexuality. So please operate on the assumption that building from a clean slate is best, and start early. Start early. Don't wait too long. As a rule, it's better to form your child's view of sexuality before having to correct what others say. Because I'm telling you, what your kids hear from others, 99.9% of it's going to be dead wrong. And so you build on a clean slate. So if you're going to think about when should I start talking about sexuality in a very clear manner, well, kindergarten to second grade is a great time to start talking about sex in a very intentional manner. Before that, before kindergarten, you're dealing with just biological differences that your kids see in their siblings, or they see with you. Why does daddy look like that? It's going to happen in family. Why does mommy have those things on her chest? Those things are going to happen with your kids. And so you have those talks all throughout, but when they get to kindergarten, you need to begin thinking about intentional conversations. Okay, number 7, last thing. This is very difficult. It's very hard to do. And I can tell you, I've had these conversations with my children, and I just told Lindley last night after going through this, I was like, it's really time for me to have another refresher with Caden, and to have some more conversation with him, because he is right on the edge of beginning to hit full-on puberty, and I just need to remind him of all the stuff that I've already told him. And Wesson was sitting there while I was having this conversation with Lindley, and I said, and probably I need to give a refresher to you, Wesson. You're fixing to go to college, and you're likely to take some girl out on a date, and she's possibly going to force herself towards you, or you're going to want to do things with her you've never felt like you've wanted to do before. So we probably need to have a freshman. He's like, Dad. I'm like, hey, it happens. So we're going to talk more, And so you need to have these conversations. But I'm just going to tell you, no matter how often you have it, no matter how much you do it, it is not going to be easy. Even 20 years into marriage, Lindley and I feel I think fairly comfortable about having conversations about our own sexuality, but it's still difficult to do. 20 years later, it's still a challenge. And here we are this far into parenting, and it's still difficult. It's just hard to do, but it's so worth it. And you've got to really make the effort to accomplish this area and to work hard in this area. Now, I've listed several resources for you. And I'm familiar with most of these. Lindley has used some of these with Malin, and these will at least get you pointed in the right direction.